Every year on November 11th, there's a shopping event that makes Black Friday and Cyber Monday combined look tiny. It's called Singles Day. But listen, this is way more than just a story about getting a good deal. We're talking corporate warfare, a really weird student prank, and, get this, a company that figured out how to literally engineer the future. All right, let's get into it.
So get this, back in 2019, on this single day, Alibaba, just Alibaba, nobody else, processed 4.1 trillion Chinese yuan in sales. Yeah, that number is so huge it's kind of hard to even wrap your head around, right? It's almost meaningless by itself. So let's try to put it into perspective.
Okay, so that one day of sales for Alibaba, that's the same amount of money that Amazon Japan makes in 2.5 years. Think about that. One day versus 912 days. The scale is it's mind-blowing. And it all brings up a really fascinating question.
I mean, how on earth did a chaotic, kind of anti-establishment student holiday turn into the most planned-out, most commercially successful 24 hours on the entire planet? To figure that out, we have to dig into the central paradox, the big secret behind the whole thing.
Yeah, you heard that right. The founder, Jack Ma himself, has said that on Singles Day, Alibaba doesn't make a single cent of profit. Actually, when you factor in all the deep discounts they have to fund and these huge marketing galas they throw, they probably lose money. So, if it's not about profit, then what in the world is it all for?
Well, it's because the real goal here isn't profit. Singles Day is the ultimate stress test for the entire company. It's a 24-hour trial by fire. They push their cloud computing, their payment systems, their logistics, even their people to the absolute limit. Really, it's a massive investment in becoming technologically unbeatable.
But okay, if the modern version is this giant tech exercise, you have to know it did not start out that way. Not even close. The real origin story isn't about fancy tech, it's about pure survival. It all kicked off with this brutal war for the soul of Chinese e-commerce.
See, back in the early 2000s, Alibaba wasn't the giant you know today. They were the underdog. And the undisputed king of the hill, the top dog in Chinese e-commerce, was a name you'll definitely recognize: eBay.
So, in 2002, eBay swoops into China, buys a local company, and just completely dominates the market. But then, the SARS outbreak hits, and this tragedy actually forces millions of people indoors and online, and suddenly there's this huge new opportunity. So Jack Ma gets the secret team together and they build a competitor, Taobao, in just 1 month. A secret project. And by 2005, they had totally beaten eBay. So the question is, how'd they do it? Jack Ma pulled off a strategy he literally called a free lunch. You see, while eBay was charging sellers fees to list their stuff and fees when they made a sale, Taobao made everything 100% free. What happened? Well, sellers fled eBay and ran to Taobao. The buyers followed the sellers, and just like that, eBay was basically starved out of the Chinese market. But this huge win created a massive new problem, a really big one. How does a completely free platform make any money?
The guy who had to figure this out was a new hire. His name was Daniel Zhang, and he was the CFO of Taobao. And his solution, well, it wouldn't just save the company. It would actually lay the foundation for what would become Singles Day.
So Zhang's big idea was to create a whole separate premium site. It was called Taobao Mall, but you probably know it as Tmall. Now, unlike the free-for-all bazaar of Taobao, which was consumer-to-consumer, Tmall was a premium business-to-consumer platform. Think of it like a fancy digital mall, where real, legitimate brands would pay fees to have a trusted storefront. But to get those brands to pay up, he had to prove that Tmall could bring them a flood of customers. He needed a huge signature event.
And the inspiration for that event? It came from the absolute most unlikely place you can imagine. A chaotic, kind of rebellious, and totally non-commercial student holiday.
Yeah, long before Alibaba got involved, November 11th in China was known as Bear Sticks Day. It was basically this unofficial anti-Valentine's Day that college students started back in the 90s. And the name is pretty clever, actually. It comes from the way the date, 11/11, looks like 4 single sticks all lined up.
So the legend goes, it all started in a dorm room at Nanjing University. You had these 4 single guys just joking around, and they realized their lonely single lives looked exactly like the 4 ones in the date 11/11. So they thought, hey, why not make it a day to, celebrate being single?
And let me tell you, the original spirit of this day was pure, youthful chaos. You had students jamming themselves onto the number 11 bus line just to show off that they were single. There were pranks, totally over-the-top public confessions of love. There were even streaking incidents that led to arrests. It was all about breaking the rules and just letting loose.
So Daniel Zhang sees all this raw, undirected energy, this desire to do something big and celebratory on this one specific day. And he has this spark of genius. He thought, what if I could take all that energy and just focus it? What if I could channel it away from pranks and point it towards products? What if I could turn this day of rebellion into a giant festival of shopping?
So that first Singles Day sale back in 2009, it was actually pretty small. But then year after year, it just grew at this absolutely explosive rate. In fact, the growth was so consistent, so perfect, that some people started to get a little suspicious. So a few years back, someone online plotted out all the sales data from every single Singles Day event. And what they found was wild. The growth curve wasn't just impressive. It was an almost mathematically perfect curve. It fit a complex equation with something like 99% accuracy. And to a lot of people, that just looked way too perfect to be real. This, as you can imagine, kicked off a huge online debate. Was the number fake? Was Alibaba just pulling these numbers out of thin air for the world's biggest shopping day just to create more hype?
Well, the truth is way more fascinating than just a simple fake number. See, the number isn't fabricated, it's engineered. Alibaba has so much data on its customers, on its sellers, on everything, that they can set a target sales goal for the day. And then they use all their tools, coupons, ads, live streams, you name it, to perfectly craft the incentives needed to hit that number with scary precision.
And this idea is right at the heart of what Alibaba is today. Just listen to what Daniel Zhang said. Alibaba is no longer an IT company, we are a data technology company. Singles Day has become the ultimate proof of that mission. It's about using data to understand, to predict, and finally to shape what millions of people buy.
In fact, that same mathematical model that first spotted that perfect curve, well, people used it to predict the sales for the 2020 event before it even happened, and the number it came up with was 329.4 billion yuan. This wasn't some random guess. It was just the next logical point on that perfectly engineered curve.
And all of this leaves us with one final, kind of mind-bending thought. You know, Singles Day started as a student prank. It turned into a clever business strategy. But now it's something else entirely. It's a demonstration of incredible power. It shows us a company that isn't just playing in the market anymore. They have the data and they have the tools to not just predict the future of commerce, but to actually build it.